Okay, good evening, and I would like to welcome everybody to the first episode of Meet the Populace. This is a new project I came up with for Children of the Dragon to help us get to know our populace a little bit better and to give us something to do while we're all, stuck in our houses. Part of the purpose of Children of the Dragon has always been to showcase the fantastic people we have in the Middle Kingdom, and I believe this is one more step in that direction. So tonight we're going to have our first interview, and I really want to thank my friend Armand, who has graciously agreed to this interview, this experimental first episode. So let's go ahead and we'll move over to Armand. And why don't you start off with telling us your name and how you would introduce yourself?
Okay. I am the Honorable Lord Armand de Chartres. I've been in the SCA for, I have a shield that's old enough to drink. It's been a while.
Well, that's actually a good lead into our first question. You'll have to excuse me as I put on my reading glasses because I don't have them memorized.
No problem.
Everybody loves to tell a story about how did you learn about the SCA and how did you come to join? So why don't you share that with us?
Oh, so I was in the Army, and I was fairly new in the city where I lived, and a friend invited me over for dinner. A mutual friend of theirs showed up, and he had chainmail on his keychain. And I said, "Ooh, that's nifty. Where'd you get that?" So he proceeded to tell me a little bit about the SCA, and I said, "Wow, that sounds cool. Tell me more." And he told me some more, and I said, "Wow, that's cool. Tell me some more." That went on for quite a while, and next thing you know, I was attending the local meetings and fighter practices, and that's how it all started.
Just took off from there. Well, we're glad you've been around with us for so long. You bring some great things to the SCA.
Thank you.
So along with that, you've been in with us for a while. What's something you've learned in the SCA that could either be a crafting skill or a life lesson, something you're very proud of?
Wow. I've learned a lot in the SCA, and I don't expect that that's going to stop anytime soon. I think probably one of the more interesting things that I've learned from a social standpoint is that we all belong to a lot of different cultures. We belong to the larger culture at large, but then we have our work culture. Some of us have a school culture, hobby cultures. Maybe you have a church that you belong to. You belong to all these organizations. And all of them work because we agree that they work. There's no one of these organizations right on up to politics and all the way down to your local knitting club that has any more real world authority than what we give to them. And I think the important thing that I've learned from that is what is more important than anything else is our relationships. Because without good relationships, we don't have agreement. And without those agreements, none of these organizations would work. So I would say that the service that I've done in the SCA has really taught me a lot about the importance of those relationships. Because as you know, we're an all-volunteer organization. If you don't treat your volunteers well, they go away. So with that in mind, I've learned a lot about how the various cultures that we participate in really function. And it's really all about relationships.
It sounds like a good way to view things. Play nice. You want others to play nice with you?
Yeah, exactly.
I like that theory. I love that. So we're going to move on to our next question now. And this is actually, I'm looking for a story. So what funny thing do you remember from an SCA event? But please, this is a family show. Keep it PG-13.
Oh, well, that rules out that story and that story. I've got one for you, though. I've got one.
Okay, good.
Okay. So years ago, I was at a Penzic, and the one thing that, if you've been to Penzic, you're in the elements, and you're going to weather whatever comes along. And one year we had a particularly bad storm. It was bad enough that a lot of people dropped their tents, especially if you had a modern tent, which I at the time did, and took shelter in the large GP medium that was serving as Andel Craig's kitchen tent at the time. And there was one lady, I'm not going to name her. I know some of the players that have been around a while probably know who I'm talking about. She was terrified of the storm, and she wrapped herself around one of the center poles of the storm. Now, mind you, she was a well-respected member of the Barony.
Mhm.
So we all began to tell the story that she was our heroine holding up the tent through this terrible tempest that threatened to blow us all away. And it was by her grace alone that we all survived. And we just had a lot of fun with it. And despite the fact that we were all soaking wet, our camps were blowing away, tents were blowing down, it was just mass chaos. But here we were in this tent, singing songs and having a good time and just weathering it as a community. It was really awesome. When the storm was over, someone rolled by our camp with a cart. Someone was following along behind the cart, banging a pot with a spoon saying, "Bring out your wet, bring out your wet."
Oh my gosh, that sounds like it was a great experience.
Yeah, you can get SCA people wet, but it's really hard to dampen their spirits.
You need to find a bard and have that written into a song. So, what is something that you would like to learn in the SCA, and what holds you back from doing it?
Oh, so many things. I've actually taken a bit more time recently to learn some armoring. I would love to have more time to do that. I really would like to be able to do more with artwork. I do a lot of pewter casting, as you know, and that's one of the ways in which my artistic skill comes into play in the SCA. But strangely enough, as much art as I don't do a lot of calligraphy and illumination. Actually, I haven't done any in the Midrealm. And I wish I felt like I had a little bit more time and space from kids and pets and things that can make that challenging. Yeah. If I had a little more time and space free of those things, I would probably be pursuing that a little bit more.
Well, hopefully someday you'll find some way to wiggle that in, because I've seen your artwork and it's amazing, and I would love to see scrolls done in your hand. That would be truly spectacular to see.
Well, I know what hobby I'll pick up when the last kid moves out.
There you go. All right, so now we're going to touch on your personal relationships a little bit, your history, people you've known. So of those who are no longer in the SCA, whether they're no longer active or they've passed away, who do you miss the most, and what fond memory of them keeps them warm in your heart?
Oh, there have been a handful of people. There are some people that don't play anymore, and there are some people that have passed away. And also, I've moved around. I started in Onsteora, so there are people from back in my first kingdom that I miss. But I think one person that stands out for me here is probably Lady Slime. I know that name will ring a bell with a lot of people. Slime was a fixture for me at Border War and a lot of other events. For those of you that don't know, when I first met Slime, Slime was playing the part of a beggar. He was a part of House Mendicus with Baron Daber and a handful of other really nifty people. And contrary to the notion that all of us are playing nobles in the SCA, Slime and his friends decided that we needed a little more lowbrow color in the SCA, and they played beggars. And they brought a very interesting counterpoint to a lot of the other things that we were doing in the SCA. And Slime just had such an incredible sense of humor. Slime, and this is the thing that I'll never forget. Slime sitting on the floor near my table at Feast, talking with me and the other people at my table. We'd offered Slime a seat, which he refused because he's a beggar. He insisted on sitting on the floor. And the other thing is Slime had a lot of health issues that prevented him from eating a lot of things. So even though we were trying to let him beg from our plates, there was only so much he could eat. So it was just a slapstick experience from start to finish. And that was something that I really appreciated. It put a lot of things in perspective. And for anyone who knew Slime personally, I cannot think of a person with a more genuine, warm soul than this guy. He was just amazing, and I will treasure my memories of him forever.
Sounds like one of the finer people we've had in the SCA. Thank you for sharing a bit about him.
You're welcome.
I'm not native to the area, so while I've heard the name, I've never heard much about the person. So it's good to have a little bit more shared of that history. Yeah. So while we're delving into the past again, what event from the past no longer exists? And well, Kat's helping me. What do you miss the most and why?
I don't know that there's one event that stands out in my mind that no longer exists, but there's actually a handful of them. And I think what they have in common is that they were smaller events. It seems like a lot of the events that I go to these days are very big affairs. They're either kingdom level events, or they're war practices, or it's Penzic, or something large scale. And those are great. I love those. I get to see all of my different friends from all over the place. I get to fight a lot of people. I get to see a lot of the arts and sciences projects that people have worked on, and amazing garb. They're great. So don't mistake me for not being a fan of those events. But some of the smaller events, I'm thinking of things like Havoc at Hastings that used to happen near here. There was another one called Fall Harvest. Day at the Castle was another good example. Some of these smaller events, there's a little less chaos. There's a little less on the schedule. There's a little bit more time for you to actually sit with individual people instead of that, flying by, hey, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? I can do that at a lot of the events that we do that at. I can do that 100 times and never actually have a full conversation with somebody. That's kind of a bummer. So I really enjoy the smaller events where I have time to sit with people and actually catch up and talk about things and do some of the things that or connect with people in the way that the SCA really first drew me in.
That's actually a good way to look at it, and that's actually something that I think a few people have missed. It's nice to have a balance. The big events, you get to see all sorts of things, but the smaller events is where you really get to connect firmly. Yeah. I was at Valday this year, and I felt that very keenly. I was running so much. I don't think I spoke more than 10 words to anyone. So I appreciate that. That's a good point of view. And so we're getting close to our time here. So we're going to move on to the last question. Who would you nominate for a Meet the Populace interview and why?
Okay, that's going to be a tough one. I know that there are actually a lot of people that come to mind, but two that come to mind right off the bat. Mistress Enid, she has seen a few things. She's been around the SCA for a good long time. I've heard some really interesting stories from her that I would just love for other people to be able to hear. She brings a perspective on the SCA from when the SCA was really developing. So she's seen it grow and change over time, and seeing that perspective really is really inspiring to me, to see that the society can grow and change with the times. But I also like hearing a little bit about, well, what did we start doing all this for? What was the idea when you first began? Because I think sometimes hearing some players who've been around a while talk about those things might give us some clues about how we can revitalize this organization as it grows.
Well, I got to admit, the few times I've spoken with Mistress Enid, and I always love catching her for a hug or taking her photo. She is truly an amazing person. So I'll probably send her a note at some point, see if I can't get her on board for one of these events.
That'd be great.
She'd be fantastic. All right. Well, like I said, we're at the end of our time. I want to thank you very much for your time, Armand. I really do appreciate it. And I also want to thank all of the viewers that might happen to be watching this. If you have, say hi. If you have questions that you would like to see asked on Meet the Populace, feel free to send them to me. You can send them through Facebook on the Children of the Dragon page, or you can send them to Vinca, V-I-N-C-A, Taviani, T-A-V-I-A-N-I, @gmail.com, and I will respond to all emails. If you would like to be interviewed, please contact me at either one of those locations, or if you'd like to nominate someone that you think would be great for one of these interviews, send that information in too. They might be picked for the next one. So I want to thank everybody for your time, and I hope you have a great SCA day.